Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major Joel Donkin. Today marks the 71st anniversary of the armistice that brought the Korean War to a halt. The Korean War began on the 25th of June, 1950, when the North Korean People's Army launched a large-scale offensive across the 38th parallel into South Korea. Over the next 3 years, the war would rage the length and breadth of the Korean Peninsula and would cost over 2 million lives. 21 member nations of the United Nations, including Australia, sent combat or medical units to assist South Korea maintain its sovereignty. In July 1951, negotiations for an armistice began at Kaesong, but negotiations were suspended when the building in which the negotiations were taking place was bombed in August. Talks resumed 2 months later at Panmunjom, but were protracted after the death of Russian leader Joseph Stalin in March 1953. At 10 a.m. on the 27th of July, 1953, delegates from both sides signed 18 copies of the 2-volume armistice points, and the armistice came into effect 12 hours later. Over the following days, both sides withdrew 2 kilometres from their frontline positions, creating the demilitarised zone which still stands today. Around 17,000 Australians served in Korea between 1950 and 1953, of which 340 were killed, over 1,500 wounded, and 30 taken prisoner. A further 16 lost their lives during the armistice enforcement operations. Today, we pay our respects to those commemorated on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. We warmly welcome the family of Private William Gordon Christie, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome recruits from the Regional Induction Company 5 Brigade headquarters. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Club Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. If you're able, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private William Gordon Christie. Known as Bill, Christie was born on the 5th of September 1928 in Paddington, New South Wales. He was the first of 3 children and the only son of William Neil Christie and Elizabeth Margaret Amelia nee Marshall. Over the next 5 years, his sisters Valerie and Shirley were born. Christie's father Neil had served with the 55th Battalion during the First World War and had been awarded a military medal in September 1918 for attacking a German machine gun position near Peronne. Neil worked for the Tumbarumba Shire Council. After the Second World War began, he joined the Royal Australian Air Force in 1942. He remained in New South Wales until his discharge from service in June 1945. His son Bill grew up in Tumbarumba and attended the local school. After gaining his intermediate certificate, he left school and moved to Yass, where he was employed as a linesman for the Postal Department at Yass Junction. 3 years later, he moved into the office as a clerk. Christie was noted for his courteous manner and his diligent work ethic. Outside work, he was known for his quiet nature, but loved riding his motorbike. Soon after arriving in Yass, he met Alice White, and they began a courtship. After they were married, they moved into a house on Mount Street. In June 1950, the Korean War began. The Australian government raised K-Force, calling for volunteers to serve in the army for 3 years, one of which would be in Korea. Christie enlisted for service with K-Force at Marrickville on the 30th of July 1951. He was sent to Ingleburn Camp for basic infantry training. During his training, he was arrested at Milton on the 29th of September for trying to drive a vehicle whilst intoxicated and unlicensed. He went before the court on the 1st of October, where he was convicted and fined a large sum of £20. He was also banned from holding a licence for 12 months. On the 20th of December, he was posted to the 1st Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, which was also located at Ingleburn. Only 4 days later, he was allocated as a reinforcement to the 3rd Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, which was on active service in Korea. He flew out of Sydney on the 26th of December, travelling via Darwin to Japan. At this time, Alice was pregnant with their first child. Christie saw in the new year at the 1st Reinforcement Holding Unit. He spent the next month training, which included the battle school at Haramura. The school simulated frontline conditions in Korea as much as possible to give the reinforcements the best training possible. He joined 3 RAR in Korea on the 9th of February and was sent to C Company. Christie received an immediate initiation when his company took Chinese mortar fire throughout the afternoon. Over the next 2 months, he was involved in the nightly patrol war. In mid-April, 3 RAR went into reserve. During this time, 1 RAR arrived from Australia and joined 3 RAR in the same brigade. 2 months of building defensive works and training followed before 3 RAR returned to the front line in late June. It was around this time that Alice gave birth to their daughter, Elizabeth. The monsoon season began soon after, and such was the intensity of the rainfall that a number of 3 RAR's bunkers collapsed and several men had to be dug out. Despite the weather, the patrolling of no man's land was as intense as ever, as was the daily Chinese artillery and mortar fire on the Australian positions. During the afternoon of the 22nd of July, 3 RAR's positions came under Chinese artillery fire. Just after 4 p.m, Christie was killed instantly when he was hit through the back by shrapnel. He was laid to rest with full military honours in the United Nations Cemetery at Tangok on the 29th of July. He was 23 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst 340 Australians who died as a result of their service during the Korean War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private William Gordon Christie, who gave his life for us, for our freedom, and in hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget. service to be for good again.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.